There's a mute. Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod. Great to be back as ever. Alan Quinlan and Matt Williams to join me. I suppose, Alan, we must first start there, fresh off the press. The Irish team squad announced for the autumn internationals. 35 players, a new captain, Caelan Doris, officially new. I know he's done it before. No real surprises. What did you make of it? A couple of debutants in Prendergast and Izuchukwu, but your assessment of it, Alan, were you surprised by anyone at all?
No. It's a very strong squad. I think there's a lot of familiar faces in it. I think it's good to see Cian Prendergast back in there. He's a very talented player. He's obviously captain in Connacht this year. Nick Timoney back in there. Guys who were on the periphery for that tour 2 years ago and in South Africa as well. Ronan Kelleher is back in there. Obviously, there's a hope that he's going to be available after what he did to his ankle a few weeks ago with Leinster over in Benetton, which is it's really good. I think Dave Heffernan going in there is a pretty obvious choice, given the injury profile of which Dan Sheehan out, and I suspect they're not entirely sure whether Ronan Kelleher will make it or not. But Rob Herring back in there as well. He hasn't played, so a little bit nervy about what's going to happen at hooker. But Dave Heffernan is in there. Other than that, it's familiar faces. I think Caelan Doris, no surprise that he's been made captain. Peter O'Mahony I think he's 15 minutes played with Munster against the Ospreys this season, so he's in there again. But no surprises. I think Cormac Izuchukwu, he deserves a crack at it. I think he obviously went to South Africa and he started the season quite well. He's a very, very talented player, someone who has those ingredients to go on and play international rugby, and you get that feeling every time he touches the ball. There's something exciting about what he does. So it's a strong squad, a lot of familiar names. Sam Prendergast is the other uncapped player in there. His development is really important. I think we know he has the talent as well, and it's just seen it consistently. He performed well in South Africa and the Emerging Ireland Tour. So, and then you have some backup players, Thomas Clarkson, Alex Candellan, and Shane Bolton, who are in the mix as well. Jack Boyle and Gus McCarthy.
Fan of Bolton, yeah. When you're a huge fan of Bolton.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Bolton. I think sometimes we mention the word X factor with at all levels, and particularly in rugby, who has that bit of X factor to do something special. We haven't seen a consistent run from Shane Bolton, but he's Irish, qualified through his grandparents, I think, but he's essentially South African, and he's big, he's incredibly powerful, and he's quick as well. So again, he's had a few injuries, so we haven't seen a run on him, but obviously the Irish selectors have looked at and thought this guy, he could be a real handful for opposition, and he has the potential maybe to play for Ireland. So a lot of tried and trusted, and sometimes when an Irish squad comes out, I think, oh God, this is a chance to bring in 5 or 6 new guys. But I suppose it's hard to see who's hard done by here in any of the other provinces. Connacht Centre, I'm gone blank. Cathal Ford, Cathal Ford. I think he's someone who has that potential as well that I'm talking about. But look, you look at the quality of the centres and the experience, centre partnerships that he can possibly play. But he's certainly someone for the future, and I think he has the ability to go and play for Ireland, Cathal Ford. Who knows when they go up to that next level, can they stay there or not? But it's a lot of tried and trusted, and no surprises really.
Break down each game week by week, but I suppose I'll go with a big question overall. With Ireland's success in the Six Nations, yes, they lost in the quarterfinal of the World Cup to New Zealand, who they played first up. biggest game, one of the biggest games of the year, but New Zealand, Fiji, Australia, and Argentina. What is now seen as a success? Is it 4 out of 4, Matt? And it's simple as that? Or which way do you break it down?
Stuart, it's an interesting topic, isn't it? Look, I think if we take a step back, South Africa are definitely the best team in the world. And the only real, like, forget the world rankings. I'm not criticising them, but they're a very imprecise tool. Because not until everyone plays each other, the top 10 teams play each other in the same calendar year, the world rankings aren't accurate. So let's forget where Ireland are and what that is. And I'm not criticising World Rugby. That's the only tool they've got. The real tool is winning World Cups. South Africa at first, and in the 12 months since then, there's no argument can be mounted to say they're still not first. The difference between South Africa and the next three teams, which is New Zealand, Ireland, and France, in my opinion, is very small. And New Zealand, they have gone so close to South Africa. They've lost 4 in a row, first time in decades since that's happened. They could have won the World Cup final, and they should have won the first test in Johannesburg. Now, they didn't, but that tells you the margins are small. Ireland are taking on New Zealand, and like everyone's writing off New Zealand. I find this absolutely staggering that they're writing off New Zealand. The New Zealanders are going through a big change, new coach, where South Africa and Ireland have had the same staff, many of the same staff for 8-9 years. So it is a change, and this New Zealand side's going to get better. Obviously,
have they lost a bit of their X factor, Matt, or do you not see it like that?
No, I don't agree with that. I find that. Look, to lose a bit of your X factor, what that means, there were 2 World Cup cycles where they were the dominant team in the world. That's not where they are right now. South Africa hold that mantle. But to think there's some pushovers and some weak team, I just think that's such an oversimplification, because the South African side is a great side. This current South African group of players and their coaching staff, they are one of the great sides of the last 25, 30 years. There's no two ways about it. But that doesn't mean the New Zealanders are terrible. They're not the best. They're number 2, with Ireland around that number 2 side. So I heard Justin Marshall say something really brilliant the other day. And he went through each side and said how great they were. South Africa, the best scrum, best line-out, best maul, best defence. Ireland, best phase attack. New Zealand, best counter-attack. France, probably second best in all of those categories. So that depends on the game you play, where New Zealand are. And so you're going to have Ireland's great phase attack against New Zealand's fantastic counter-attack. So your kicking game becomes important. If you kick poorly against New Zealand, you can win, as Australia proved in 2 tests where Australia played actually all right of the 4 halves. They played all right for 2 halves. But I actually believe that first test is going to be the biggest challenge for New Zealand. I think they'll definitely beat Australia and Fiji. The Australians may improve very much on the tour. We'll come back to them. Do not write off Argentina. Felipe Conoponi has got this Argentinian side back to being a world-class outfit. They got their Triple Crown, beat South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia. New Zealand, which is an incredible feat for Felipe just coming in as a new coach. And they also beat France in Argentina. Now, it's a very weakened French side. I understand that. But that's still a pretty good record for the first few weeks. So Argentina aren't going to be a pushover. But Ireland will be better against Argentina because they have a week together. Coming together and playing New Zealand on that Friday night at Lansdowne Road at the Aviva, that will remain a massive challenge. If Ireland can win that, I think that's a great achievement, because the Kiwis are wounded. They are angry about their record against Ireland, and I do mean angry. And the media are setting Ireland up as well as red-hot favourites. And I think Ireland are favourites, but not red-hot. You can never put a New Zealand team down like they've been put down in the media. And I think it is a gross over-exaggeration of where that team really is.
Oh, the great world we live in, all the Kiwis, or a lot of them, wanted Scott Robertson in. And then he's come in and now they're saying, yeah, but maybe not quite where we want to be. It's it's very, very fickle, isn't it? But like, he's top class coaching. As Matt said, they're probably just going to get better and better. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I think so. I agree with Matt. I certainly wouldn't be writing off New Zealand. I suppose up until that game in 2016, we'd never beaten them. So it's a new phenomenon, really, that we've been successful in recent years against New Zealand. But ultimately, they were the ones who knocked us out of the World Cup last year. So
100%.
does that make Ireland angry and a little bit of a chip on their shoulder? Well, I think a little bit like going to South Africa in the summer tour. It's very pleasing if you can get a result in that situation, what Ireland did in that second test, and it kind of reinforces the point that we were all trying to make. And I think aside from anyone critiquing Ireland at the World Cup and calling them chokers or failures, I think everybody realised that was probably the best Irish squad we ever had at a World Cup. Well, it is the best Irish side we ever had at a World Cup. Best chance of winning it and all that stuff. And Ireland were genuine contenders. And it wasn't down to choking. I think, we've gone over it a million times, really. And I think New Zealand got it right on the night. And they have that ability of backing themselves when they put on that jersey, even if they're not in their best form. They caused South Africa a lot of problems in both those tests in the Rugby Championship in South Africa. So they're a very, very dangerous side.
We're close to winning the final as well, Quinny.
Yeah, very close.
14 players, but close, as you say, not good enough.
Possibly could have, So they have a real belief. And for them, it's about backing up last year. And maybe, they get a result against Ireland. It's deemed, there was a time, and I was involved in a few games. I was involved in tours down New Zealand where it was just kind of taken for granted. They probably didn't even know intimately much about the Irish team they were playing against, in the sense that, it was kind of an attitude of, okay, you're going to get that fighting spirit and you're going to get Ireland kick the ball up in the air and, a few problems here and there, but ultimately we'll win out. I guarantee every New Zealand player will know every Irish player inside out. And that's out of respect. That's how you earn respect, and you earn it through results and performances. So it'll be a cracker of a game, won't it? I think it's a tricky one. It's always tricky. I always say first Six Nations game of the year, first November game of the year. Essentially, you're coming together after being months apart as a group, and it's hard to jam pack in and find that perfect blend of form that you want.
This podcast, Quinny, never happens to this podcast. Just
no.
Just straight in where we left off.
Yeah, but in a sense, you have a little bit of rust, and they would have been probably, finishing up the Rugby Championship, and they've played together more recently, obviously. So look, it's they'll be a powerful side, very dangerous side, and Friday night at the Aviva is going to be, it's going to be a unique experience with a Friday night game against the All Blacks. So it'll be a special one, and again, that little bit of rust that you talk about, but you would hope from Andy Farrell's point of view that all his players will have multiple minutes under their belt. There are some players in there that don't have a lot in that Irish squad, so it's getting that balance right of picking players who are match fit. The other side of that, they'll be fresh. Bundy Aki's in a couple of games played, Mac Hansen. Probably more of the Leinster players have minutes under their belt. Jacob Stockdale, we never mentioned him back in the squad as well. He started the season really well, and he looks in super shape. So, again, Peter O'Mahony, he needs to try and get some minutes in the next few weeks. It's not far away. It's 2 weeks now, isn't it, to that test match? Yeah. Friday, 2 weeks. So, will he be involved? He's not going to be involved this weekend. So I think, it's a test. Scott Robertson and of course Jason Holland, who played with Munster and a great friend, and he's been back in New Zealand a number of years coaching the Hurricanes as well. So he'll know what to expect. He'll know a little bit about. He's very intelligent. He was as a player and then as a coach in Munster with us. So it's like Matt said. Ireland's phase play has been exceptional, and And they'll be very mindful of Ireland, what they did, and went to Durban and win that second test, and the way they attacked and exploited South Africa. But ultimately, it was New Zealand under Joe Schmidt last year. You would imagine some of those strike plays that punished Ireland at the World Cup. So look, it's a big test match. Both teams and players will have their own kind of agendas and their own drive and emotion to try and get a result. But again, it's the first game up for Ireland, and it's a tough start for them, certainly.
Matt, we must talk about the new call laws coming in. I know they've been trialled in the Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship in under 20, but I suppose the big talking point is the 20-minute red card for technical offences and accidental head clashes. Warren Gatland was for it. There are a few against it, and the French Rugby Association. Your take from the outside, Matt? Are you 50-50 or pro or against?
Stuart, if we come back, I'm super pro protecting players. But there is a balance about protecting the game and keeping the credibility of the game. So for 100 years, more than 100 years at international level, there was only a handful of players sent off. And I'm talking less than 10 in the top tier 1 teams, because you had to do something really egregious to be sent off. You had to punch someone, kick it. It was a piece of real violence. And they accepted head-eye tackling. You look through some of the old videos, and it wasn't safe. Now, what they're saying is, and we take the World Cup final, for example, Sam Cane. Sam Cane definitely miscalculated a tackle against the South African players, caught the ball. He thought he was going to step off his right. He stepped off his left, and Sam Cane's shoulder came into contact with Jesse Creel's head. Definitely, as the law says, a red card. Sam Cane didn't come back on. But that was a huge punishment for what everyone in the game knows is an accident. It's very different doing that to someone lining you up and punching you, which is what the old
Matt, could I say, and I agree with you just very briefly, yes, it's an accident and he was very unlucky. But my argument, and I'll give my opinion a bit more in a minute, is player behaviour has to change. And I think it has changed. And you make a very valid point about the old days. I even look back at some of the games we played, the way we'd fly off our feet in rucks and all that stuff. It was reckless. And it has to change. But Sam Cane did one of them to Robbie Henshaw in 2017-18 in Dublin, if you remember. Robbie Henshaw turned back around and he got a shoulder straight into the face. It was a penalty, I think.
The Heineken Cup final and the Premiership final. There's 3 big ones in the World Cup.
But the point is now, Quinny, the referees and the TMOs can use discretion.
Correct.
So what we had a red card, so we used a bomb to kill a fly. So now we can say, if that was Sam Cane then, TMO can look at it and say, no, that remains a red, you're off. You don't.
Do you know in football, if you accumulate a number of yellow cards in a game, I think they should have added something to that to say that, right, okay, Sam Cane didn't mean that. And I don't think he's trying to do it on purpose to Robbie Henshaw or Jesse Creel in the final. And I think it is a big punishment. And I felt so sorry for him in that final. I love Sam Cane. He's honest. I love his work ethic. I love his attitude of just keeping the head down, working his socks off. And he's been a great player at international level.
Yes.
But just for example, if Sam Cane did another one that's deemed the yellow card or even upgraded to a red by the TMO or by the off-field bunker decision, I think then I have a problem unless we want. What I'm trying to get at here is we want player behaviour to change. So, and I do agree with some of the decisions.
There's an example. Sam Cane could start on the 8th of November and it could happen again. And which way do you see it then?
Well,
if he does the exact same thing.
Well, basically, the bunker review has to look at this and say, well, if it's not a malicious, deliberate act, and I think the deliberate act is a reckless act. Is someone's, you look at Bundy Aki's tackle last week and Andrew Osborne in the sports ground. It's an incredibly brilliant tackle as regards impact, effectiveness for stopping a certain try, but it's on that borderline, a couple of inches up above. And Bundy Aki is not playing rugby for November. And obviously he got it right, but I think we just need players to actually give the benefit of the doubt, go lower. Has it worked? Yes. And that's not a criticism of Bundyaki. I think it's an incredible tackle, and I think he's a great player. But player behavior has to change. So for me, around this 20-minute red card situation and going to the bunker review, I think what's really important here is the referee still has the discretion to give a red card.
Absolutely.
That red card doesn't allow them bring on someone after 20 minutes. You're punished then for the day.
Exactly.
I do, in a sense, actually. I was kind of against the red card 20-minute situation, but we got some clarity here, and I'm okay with the 20-minute now. If I go up to make a tackle on someone and I slip up and my arm comes across, hits him across the face, in essence, that's a red card unless there's loads of mitigation. But if there's not, but I didn't mean it. It's not a malicious attempt to take the head off someone. And I think I deserve the red as an individual. I don't come back on. And then, in fairness, you're talking about the integrity of the game. But I do think, and something that might come into it, is if I did that, if I got a red for that and I got a week or two, it was upgraded in the bunker system to red, and I don't come back on, and I got a low sanction of 2 weeks or something. If I come back and I do another accidental one, well then my behavior is not changing. So we must see player behavior changing, and I think we have. If you go back to the World Cup in 2019, and I remember John Langford, you know him well, Matt. He's on the judicial citing committee there. And I remember spending time in Japan with John. He was over reviewing some of these incidents. He was sitting on the panel, giving out the sanctions. And I remember that World Cup, there was a lot of judicial reviews. There was a lot of kind of players sent off, players cited. We didn't see that last year. Sporadically, you'll have an odd one here and there. But I think it's great in the sense that it's an awful punishment for a team to suffer if it's an accidental one.
And Quinny, look, in our game, accidents happen, and people say, "How does it happen?" You think you're going at such pace, and people change direction. So like the Sam Cane one. Sam was it accidental though, or was him? Yes. Well, you watched that 100 times, and we're taking one incident, and we shouldn't take one incident. But on that particular incident, I think is a great example because Sam thought Jesse Creel was going to step off his right foot and go away from him. So Sam is coming this way, and he thinks Jesse's going to go away. So he's planning to make the tackle 3 or 4 meters away, and Jesse Creel, because such a genius athlete, changes direction into Sam. And Sam is high. Now, that just happens. Rob Valentini against Wales, the Wallaby back rower, 2 or 3 years ago, had a terrible head clash with Baird, their big second row, 6'6" guy. And you can just tell Valentini slips and Baird changes direction and they hit heads. No one in their right mind wants to smash their head onto someone else's head.
Yeah,
anyone who plays the game knows that's an accident.
Now, Freddie Stewart won, actually. We were at the Viva. The Freddie Stewart, remember, against Hugo Keenan.
Yeah, exactly.
Very accidental as well.
Exactly. Freddie Stewart didn't mean that on Hugo. You could see that. Should he be punished? Should players be protected? Do we have to change player behaviour? Exactly what Quinny said. Yes, we do. But the game should not be destroyed because that's not egregious foul play. So really what we're trying to bring in here is a little bit of nuance to change the player behaviour and protect the spectacle of the game. Soon as that happened with Freddie Stewart, the game was over. Oh, and we're going to win. People paying a lot of money. There's a whole lot of reasons behind this. But they're trying to get a balance back in to this red card. And I think it's worthwhile looking at because the other one that we haven't mentioned, and I do believe this is going to be made law as well, is the tackles will be below the sternum. I think this is going to come in.
It's going to be so difficult. It's going to be so difficult. If you think back to Angus Ta'avo in the second test in Dunedin against Ireland, his tackle on Gary Ringrose, it was a sickening head-on-head. He got a straight red for that. Is he trying to, tackle with his head and deliberately do that to Gary Ringrose? No, he's trying to put in a big shot on him. He's upright. And it's a punishing one for them in that situation. So I think it's still a very complex situation, and it's a difficult one. It's worth trying this, definitely. I know it's been trialed, and Southern Hemisphere are very pro the 20-minute red card, and you hear a lot of the game is ruined and the game is finished, and that's a rugby incident. I saw 5 rugby incidents in Munster Stormers last Saturday, and none of them were picked up or reviewed, and I think that's the worry for me, that there's still a lot of reckless stuff, diving off your feet and high shots going in. So, yeah, let's see how this plays out. But
is there any worry at all if you're new to the game, let's say, and want to listen to, say, this podcast, as I may as well plug it, but you are new and you're watching the game of rugby, someone comes off, it's like, oh, what happens? They go to the bunker, 20-minute red card, they can't return, or it's actually just play on. There's a lot of variations of everything.
Yeah, well, how do
you grow it?
Let's simplify this here. If I do a deliberate act in the field,
yes,
the referee can send me straight off, red card.
Yes.
If I do a high tackle on Matt Williams out in the field, he steps and I hit him high, shoulder into the chin, little bit of mitigation, the referee's not sure, the crowd are baying for blood. We're seeing red cards come out fairly regularly in the last couple of years. The bunker system, I always thought that was great, because it gives you a chance to take a breather, watch different angles,
100%.
take the pressure off the ref. So he's just going to review straight away there. If he's any doubt that it's not a full red card, he's reviewing straight to the bunker.
Yes.
You go to the bunker, and then the off-field referees can look at that and decide, was that, even though it was not intentional, was it reckless?
Yes.
If it's reckless, he then can give the red card. That player then, he's into the showers. His game is over.
His game is over. He's finished.
But if the bunker gives the red, after 20 minutes, you can get back up to 15 players. So,
yes.
In other words, we're saying, okay, if there's accidental stuff and even reckless stuff, your punishment is 20 minutes. And that can be a severe punishment as well. So we got to see how it plays out here. I think giving the power to the referee, because that wasn't there with the other 20 minutes, the Southern Hemisphere stuff, because a 20-minute red card was right across the board. If I punched you in the face and I got a red card, that was 20 minutes. You're punished for. I'm gone for the day, but they can bring back on a player. I think it's really good now that the referee has that ability to still give the red card. If he feels this is deliberate, dangerous, really reckless, and the player could have avoided his actions, that red card reduces that team to 14 for the rest of the game.
There's one other aspect to this.
Just quickly, because I don't want to keep going on about this, but go for Matt. No, Farrell.
No, I was just saying there's a lot of these laws that are going to come up in November, just so everyone's listening, that they're trying to put more ball in play time. So one of our big problems is our games, our 80 minutes of rugby, we're only getting 30 minutes. 80 minutes time, we're only getting 30 minutes rugby. A lot of this is TMOs, we're stopping, we're taking things. They're trying to reduce that. And
the 30-second scrum and line out's good, Matt. Yeah,
absolutely. Fantastic.
The 60 seconds from when you score to hit a conversion, that's tight going, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or not?
Mate, I personally, I've said so long, 45 seconds. You should have 45 seconds. Now, if you go back in history and look back at the 70s and 80s, guys were taking under 30 seconds to take shots at goal. Now, this is something that's come from, and I'm not blaming, just Johnny Wilkinson and Dave Orr. Dave Orr is a great kicking coach, greatest kicking coach the world's game's ever seen. They started doing these processes that are starting to go longer and longer. And they've had to step in and say, listen, come on now, guys. 60 seconds is plenty. And it is plenty. What does that say? You want a kicking tee? That's great. Get it out there quick. We're not waiting for your kicking tee. You can't have a drink, fix your socks, do your hair. Come on, get on with it. Now, if you can't put a ball down on a kicking tee and put it over the dot in 60 seconds, you're not at international rugby. That's the rules. And I think that's a good thing. Now, let's also remember, Leinster fans will have it written on their memories, Heineken Cup final against La Rochelle in Marseille, the last kick of the game. Isaiah West is looking at the clock. He's ready. He's looking at the clock, waiting for it to burn down to burn time. He could have kicked that in under 45 seconds. That's the sort of stuff they're trying to cut out. I got no problems with that. Zero. We need the ball in play time to be getting up around 60 minutes for a great entertaining spectacle. We've got a long, long way to go to get up to 60 minutes ball in play time out of the 80. these things, the 30 seconds line out, the 30-second scrum, and the 60 seconds for all kicks, I think they are very, very positive changes to the game.
Well, would you pick up on that? Which one of the lineouts and the kicking do you prefer? Like, if we take the old Italian coach now, or Casada, he should take forever to kick the ball. And Matt talked about Wilkinson and stuff. Would you be pro the minute, or do you feel not sure?
It's tight for me a minute. I think obviously if an out half scores a try himself and it's after multi-phase and everyone's out on their feet and they're hanging on, it's tricky if you touch that ball down as a 10 and you've got to get out and get organised. But look, they're just going to have to get used to it. They're fit. I think we've seen a few of kickers just waiting. You dot down under the post and the ball is thrown back to the out half and he's 90 seconds. That's a long time. But again, I'm open to kind of trialing these and seeing how they go. It's probably right in a sense that we need to speed the game up a little bit. There's a lot of dawdling, and particularly if teams are winning and controlling the tempo of a game, they're slowing down lineouts. And I know it probably doesn't. It goes against the best scrummaging team in the world, which are South Africa. The way from a free kick now, you can't opt for another scrum. That's just to try and get the game going, because we've seen over the years the frustration of having another scrum, it collapses, another free kick, another penalty, and all this stuff going on and on and on around scrum. So anything that's going to speed up the game, and again, hopefully we'll see that and see more action and more life around, time wasting and stuff like that.
Quinny, there's one other aspect, and you're 100% correct, mate. The other aspect that all this brings in is increasing aerobic fitness. So, we use the term test match. It was a test match of skill, of character, of tactics. But it used to be also a test match of aerobic fitness, especially for the forwards. Now, and we talk about player safety. The medical experts are saying this is a link to the bench as well. So I expect that we'll see changes to the bench, that the replacements, that the bomb squad and the finishers, as they've been termed, that may very well end in November. And I would support that, because the doctors are also saying huge, giant fresh men that don't have to worry about aerobic fitness. So they're just big and bulk and go to the gym. They don't have to keep going for 80 minutes. When they hit you, they really hit you. So one of the doctor's suggestions is increase the need for aerobic fitness. That will mean some of our really big guys might have to shed 10 kilos and make them play for longer so that we get aerobic fatigue in the game. And that's a good thing, because it's a test of your fatigue. Now when you go to the training especially for our type 5, if you're a South African type 5, you're playing, most of you are only playing less than half a game. You don't have to do a lot of aerobic training. So you can remain huge and bulky. Again, this is talking about injury of impact. So I think while we're looking at some of these laws in isolation, the 60 seconds law, the 30 seconds for the scrum, the yellow cards, the red cards, it is, and we also then consider the replacement bench. This is about trying to speed up the game, put a need for aerobic fitness back as a priority in the game, especially for our forwards. And again, a lot of this is also aimed at player safety. So I think the suite of changes, when we look at them in total, I think there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of thought gone into them. Now, yeah. I hope they get through. There's a political process to get through, and we know with World Rugby that's not always the case.
I think it's important to understand that a lot of these trials are coming from stakeholders in the game.
Yeah,
players
true.
In the game, coaches in the game, that are currently in the game as well. So it's not entirely players and coaches deciding what laws are in the game, but they're always worth looking at. We've seen lots of positive changes. The 50-22 has been a great introduction into the game, where you're not having that blanket defense all the time, and you're now protecting that backfield a little bit. And how many cheers do we get in a game now when someone pulls off a brilliant 50-22? So there's been lots of adaptations and changes over the years. I think these will be good. I hope they'll be good, and they're coming from stakeholders in the game. So Six Nations run November, so it's not entirely World Rugby who make this decision that implement it. They make the decisions and the, with the planning of the stakeholders and different people who are in the game who go and have conferences and talk this stuff out. They don't just invent this World Rugby. And then that's given over to whether Six Nations allow it to come into November, and they are allowing it to come into November. From what I'm hearing, they were the ones that were insisting on the referee, and that's probably coming from the referees having the ability to give a straight red, and I think that's a good one. So that's like any sort of dialogue you have. Everybody wants this to work, Matt. Everybody wants it to be a better product for spectators and people viewing.
I agree with you, Quinny. And just the last point on that, a lot of these laws were in the championship, the Southern Hemisphere Rugby Championship this year, and it was the best championship in many years. It was
it worked, Matt. They all worked there.
It worked. A lot of them, and it was a really great championship. Except for Australia, Argentina beating everyone. The test between New Zealand and South Africa were fantastic. The New Zealand Australia tests were really entertaining games. So look, I think there's a lot of positives about what they're projecting. Alan is exactly right. What these will happen during November, I'm not sure the exact date. These will be proposed to the World Rugby Assembly, I think the term is, and they will then either say, yes, this will become laws, or we'll continue more trials, or whatever it happens to be. The other one that we didn't mention was the number 9 not following the ball through. The defending number 9 can't follow the ball through. He has to stay at his loose head prop side, tight head prop side. So that what that meant was the ball got out of the scrum really fast. So that reduced the number of scrum penalties. So again, trying to speed the game up. So there was a whole lot of little laws that they trialled, and I think overwhelmingly they were great. And I think some of the amendments, as Alan said, about the red card from the North have been really positive as well.
Matt, while you mentioned the Rugby Championship, we must get your take on Australia. Wasn't a good results-wise, but they've brought back in Samu Karevi, Will Skelton, and then there's a new kid in the block, Joseph Suali, the Roosters player who's now joined the Waratahs and getting a crack straight away with the Wallaby side by Joe Schmidt. Is that what they need? And overall, results haven't happened. People probably get that. They're trying to rebuild in Australia. What's the sense over there about Joe Schmidt, and is it a long-term plan?
Stewie, there's a lot of frustration, and I think that's ignorant frustration. We in Australia, we've blamed our coach for 20 years. Joe's a fantastic coach. Joe's not the problem. Our system's the problem. There's not a lot of really talented players, especially 9 and 10 and 12. We don't have game breakers. We don't have that cutting edge that Australia was renowned for. They've also brought in a young guy called Tane Edmonds, and he played for the Waratahs. I'm a big fan of his attack. I saw him miss some really bad tackles during Super Rugby that cost them games. Now he's coming in. This Joseph Suali played for the King's School in Sydney, played unbelievable rugby, went straight to rugby league. He's come back. He is the real deal. He is a great 6'3", unbelievably athletic guy. Whether they play him outside centre or fullback, I'm not sure. But keep an eye on him. But they're also playing some A games. He will start in those. But by the time Ireland play Australia, which is the last game, I think he'll be in the starting team. They definitely need Will Skelton. They need Karevi. They need everything they can get. They still got a couple of players out injured, but it certainly looks a stronger squad than Joe had before. Against New Zealand, the 4 halves against New Zealand, 2 were excellent. The other 2 were rubbish. They've got to get some consistency. But it is this ability to create attack and space that is a huge issue. Other people are saying, and I disagree, I say, our discipline's
Has that always been an issue, Matt, over the last year or two? Or has Joe changed anything? I know maybe there's a lot of defeats, but what have you seen sort of his blueprint and the positive shoots from him?
Yeah, look, there was an incredible couple of set plays they pulled off. They almost scored in the opening minute against New Zealand with a short side play off the scrum. They knocked the ball, or literally knocked the ball over the try line. They would have scored. And that's what Joe is renowned for. When we sit in studio with Shane and Rob, they talk about how Joe is just brilliant off the set play set play attack and winning the air and the kicking game. We remember back to New Zealand when Joe was with New Zealand in the World Cup and those brilliant little tries they scored. I remember one they came through and Artie Sevilla was given the ball off the line, did a chip kick, Will Jordan catches and scores a try. That is Joe. That is what he
scored
does.
Against Ireland off a set piece as well. Jordan straight through them.
Exactly. And that's what he does. We've seen that. We've also seen huge improvement in their breakdown work. What is the problem with Australia is people are saying it's discipline, but it is their skills breaking down under the pressure that's been put on them by great teams like South Africa and New Zealand. I've got to say the Argentinians did the same thing in the second test, and they exposed them, and their skills break under that pressure. Rather than discipline, it is their mind and skills breaks under the pressure. They can't cope with it. And until they come up to speed with that, they're going to struggle. So this is the 40th year anniversary of the great Grand Slam tour of 1984, where for the first time an Australian team beat England, Ireland, Scotland and Wales. And that's who this team's playing as homage to that great team that had Michael Lynott, that had Mark Ella, Simon Poitier and these great players in that side. I think they'll be lucky to win two. If they can beat Wales, perhaps Scotland, and they've got a terrible record up at Murrayfield, but if they win two, I think that's a success. Wales would be the only game that I think they could and should win. But Australian rugby is rebuilding. It is trying really hard. I know they're getting good people in. They've got a new high-performance director. They've advertised for a new under-20s and high-performance coach. But we're not going to see the benefits of that for another 3 years, and I think that's going to be long after Joe's gone.
Long-term plan then. Alan, I want to bring it back in the last couple of minutes to Ireland. For years, or a good few years, they were known for these set piece moves and tries and scoring off different places. Then the last couple of years, it's been this multi-phase and brilliant attack. What's the next layer? I know everyone wants to improve in all parts of the game, but for you, Alan, where does Ireland need to go to the next level? Yes, we can't go back to the World Cup, or it's 3 years down the track, but in the short to medium term, what do you think Ireland need to up even more?
Well, I think the template for what South Africa have done around set piece and been so good at their line out and scrum, I think we've probably had, and look, maybe it's down to personnel and that sheer physical size as well. I think South Africa sometimes remind us that they're not the heaviest pack of forwards in the world, and I think Ireland were heavier than one of the tests, or certainly very close to the same pack weights. But it's they're so clinical at that set piece, aren't they? Line out, scrum, dominance, winning penalties when
it's nearly better at the basics.
Yeah, they're really good. And I think, look, we don't have, if you talk about our best two wingers at the moment are James Lowe and Matt Hansen. They're not absolute gas merchants. They're not people who just run around someone and do something incredibly special. You look at even Corabetti, who's not in the Australian squad. He's probably quicker than Matt Hansen and James Lowe. But it's their footballing ability, their connections with the team. And that's Ireland's biggest strength at the moment is that sublime attack. And it has been for a couple of years. What beat Ireland against New Zealand probably was set piece, because even for the try that Ari Savia scored in the first half, that comes off a lost line out. They got a 50-22 when they score a couple of minutes later. Those scrum penalties against Andrew Porter, really crucial they were. There was 3 of them. So for Ireland to go to the next level, yes, I could say, get some absolute incredible pace in your back line and just magic dust about one-on-one players counter-attacking and all that stuff. Their biggest strength is their collective attack right across the board. They have loads of footballers up front, but maybe that's the little chink in the armour that other teams maybe will go after and try and go after, is pressurising them at lineouts and at scrum time. So, I'm not saying it was very small margins, but you saw what even the game Ireland won against South Africa, the World Cup, it's 4 or 5 lineouts they lost in that first half. It could have been a little bit more comfortable for them. But I think if to become a world-class team and a consistent world-class team, you have to do the basics really well, and that's why South Africa have 2 World Cups. They haven't always played the best rugby as regards from an attacking point of view, but they squeeze the opposition. Even go back to that semi-final against Wales in 2019, That was just punishing power, aggression, and Pollard kicking penalties. So yeah, we can win ugly, absolutely, and I think it's just getting better at set piece, and the forward exchanges would bring us to a level and try and get it consistent. I'm not saying it's bad, because we have games where we go out. I think back to that first game in Marseille this year, the Ireland-France game. Our set piece our lineup was excellent. So it's not we can't achieve that. It's just being consistently good at it.
Matt, final one to you. Any player you're really looking forward to see over November? Irish or New Zealand or anyone Australian? Who do you want to see?
I think it's going to be a great November, mate. You look at the games across the Northern Hemisphere; they're absolutely fantastic games every weekend. I'm really, really looking forward to it because, as I said, the Six Nations we just had was great, and the championship was the best championship in a long time. I'm really fascinated on the development of the Irish Tens and where that's going to go. I think there's a couple
Phil Coyley for you, Matt. Yep.
Oh, mate, look, I don't know who's. I think Crowley should be picked first. He's been very, very good. Frawley's been excellent coming through Prendergast. Really fine young player. And it's interesting, that group has really been refined over the last 12 months. The growth of these players and the opportunities they've been given. I think the one area, talking about what Quinny was saying, was exactly right. It's also Ireland's kicking game in general play. And I think if I have one slight criticism of Jack, and I'm a great admirer of his attacking play and his generalship, it is his kicking in general play, which is one of Frawley's positives, I think. He kicks very, very well, in my opinion. Now, he's still not the finished product, and I think Crowley will go through it. But that development and how they move through that process, especially in that first game against New Zealand, is going to be fascinating. Because while that team, you look through that Irish team, it's going to be the guts of the Lions side. That squad, there's a lot of those guys going to be wearing a red jersey or a scarlet jersey in Australia in 15 months' time now, or 12 months' time. But the Tens, they're really young guys. That's the one area of real development in this Irish side, and I'll be really interested to see how that pans out. And that may very well determine how Ireland, whether they get a 3-1 series, a 2-2, or a 4-0. I think if I had to say now, I'm pretty hopeful of 4-0 because I think they're really talented guys. They've just got to step up and keep that learning process going that they're in.
A week early for predictions. Alan, just come in there quickly. If Frawley is fit, which we hope he is, hurt himself last week, but do you see him maybe getting one game to start at 10, the Fiji one or the Argentina?
Yeah, possibly Argentina or Fiji. Yeah, I think I'm just nervous about look, this has to be handled right. If Jack Crowley doesn't play well, Kieran Frawley gets a shot. Making change for the sake of it is risky business because it can damage confidence of the other player.
Farrell's never done that. Oh,
no, I'm not saying it, but look, I think Jack Crowley has proven himself a little bit inconsistent at times. I think he's growing and developing all the time. The control part is for me is where he needs to improve a little bit. He's an incredible defender. He's physical, has all the attributes, but it's just a little bit of control. So yeah, I think of course if it's Argentina or Fiji. And look, who knows? Maybe the change will be made for Australia. Like we saw Crowley at the start there 2 years ago, and you're thrown into the Lions then as well. So we at the start of this podcast we're saying, well, you'd love to see 5 or 6 uncapped players in there, but they're not really available. They're not really. It's not a case of load of fellas left out of the squad to go into it. So I think maybe then we'll see a bit of tweaking, and hopefully that happens. And look, for 2027, it's all about depth. And it seems like a long way away. And the important part, and this is brass tacks of it, this is a business. It's about winning test matches and money coming into the coffers. And that's what makes the system pretty strong here in Ireland.
Well, thanks as always. We'll be back over the next couple of weeks to preview the big one, Ireland v New Zealand in Dublin. And we'll chat to you soon. Thank you.